You know, my wife and I had been just eking it out for 20 years. Suddenly we got millions in the bank. All the big trends are coming out of California. So that's why I came to California, to find the next big trend in the US, like Levi jeans and waterbeds and skateboards. I was surfing up at Malibu one day, and it was, October, November, the water was getting really cold, and I was pulling on the sheepskin boots after surfing, and I just got goosebumps, and I went, oh my God, there's no UGG boots in America.
Were there low moments during the UGGs period for you?
The first year's sales was 28 pairs. We bought 500 pairs in and we thought we were going to be instant millionaires. I was so disappointed. I went down to Huntington Surf and Sport, and the owner, he goes, "Hey Brian, I heard you sold the business." And I went, "What?" I drove back and read the contract, and I went, "Oh, I actually don't own the company." And 3 months later, we were shipping like crazy. We had more money than we knew what to do with, and I had a much better start.
Today we are at the house of Brian Smith, the founder of the global billion-dollar brand UGGs. We learn more about how he turned a $500 investment into a $2 billion a year company, how he nearly lost it all, and what advice he has for those of you who want to start a billion-dollar company.
I think I'm best known for being the founder of UGG, and that's been a great ride because it's such an emotional brand. Very, very rarely do you have people who are just passionate. Everybody's passionate about. Everybody remembers the first pair of Uggs they had. They always tell me, "Oh, I remember I got them in 1987," and they thought they were the first ones,
Yeah.
But nevertheless, I never tire of hearing people's Ugg stories, and it's very few brands you can think of have that emotional attachment. So I feel blessed for that.
Why do you think UGGs bring out that in people?
Well, a couple of things. One is that when you put them on, the most common thing I've ever heard is, "Oh my God," right? That's the first thing. So it's a physical thing that makes them feel fantastic. But more than that, it's it grew up as a counterculture sort of fad because of the way I introduced it. And that fad went from strata to strata to strata, all across the retail world. And I mean world now. I mean it's everywhere. Every single country I've ever been in, there's people wearing UGG boots. So it's really, really cool.
And so did you make your fortune, your wealth, and your money through the UGGs business?
That was the beginning of it. Yes.
Can you tell me, what do you mean the beginning of it?
Well, that was the first company that I really rode to being a really big success. It was a 20-year process, and that one has been by far the most lucrative of all the things I've done. But I've been in precast concrete and steel, and since then, and I mentor a lot of people in different retail products and stuff. So
before UGGs and all that, what was your first job ever? And your first paycheck?
I studied for 10 years to be an accountant, like a CPA, and I finally graduated. I was working during the day and studying at night. It took 10 years, and the day I graduated, I quit.
Sounds like you could have done that 9 years before, Tim.
Yeah, but I hate giving up things, and I'm not saying that I don't use that knowledge, the accounting knowledge, but I really wish I had understood finance. That's a whole different animal. But yeah, no, I quit, and literally I was meditating, and I just bought my very first Pink Floyd album. That was Dark Side of the Moon, right? And the words of the second song was that, I think it was, "Tired of lying in the sunshine, staying home to watch the rain. You are young and life is long and there is time to kill today." And I just heard those words and I went, he's talking about me, because I just quit and I had no idea what I was going to do, right? And then one day you find 10 years have got behind you, no one told you when to run, you missed the starting gun. And I got covered in goosebumps, and I went, oh, and I was looking at all my friends tracking off to partnerships in the accounting, and all my other friends who started businesses straight out of high school, and they were all doing well, and I felt like I'd been running on the spot for 10 years. And that's when I did my meditation, and I just started yoga. I found a book on yoga, and that sort of led to meditation. I can't say I deliberately did it, it just happened. And I was thinking, all the big trends are coming out of California. So that's why I came to California, to find the next big trend in the US, like Levi jeans and waterbeds and skateboards and, you know, surf brands and all that. And I came here looking for that to take to Australia. I never intended to stay here, and I never went back. Even though I was an accountant, like a chartered accountant, when I quit being one just to come over here and find some new thing. I was never planning to stay in America. I came here looking for a business to take back to Australia. And I was surfing up at Malibu one day, and it was, you know, October, November, the water was getting really cold, and I was pulling on my sheepskin boots after surfing, because you know, they wick moisture out and they get your feet warm real fast. And I just got goosebumps, and I went, oh my God, there's no Ugg boots in America. And I was with my buddy, and I said to him, hey man, we got to go into business. We're going to be instant millionaires. You know, we had no idea that it would take 20 years.
During your Uggs experience, what were some of the lowest lows? Because you said it was tough for some period of time.
Yeah. The toughest part was, but I look back, and these were the best parts, right? They were so hard at the time. The first year's sales was 28 pairs. You know, we bought 500 pairs in, and we thought we were going to be instant millionaires. 28 pairs the first season, you know, out. And I was so disappointed, you know, and my buddy Doug got another job, and I couldn't stop because I had 480 pairs in the warehouse, you know, in my third bedroom. And
warehouse.
Yeah, and so the next year I, you know, said, okay, I'm run some ads, and so we got 2 models and posed them on the beach at Wind and Sea down in La Jolla, you know, the perfect hair and clothing and big, tall white boots, you know, front and center in the ads. And the sales that next year went to about 10,000. I'm thinking, that's crazy, it should be more. So I got a summer job. I was scraping the bottom of boats at Marina del Rey for the summer. And then the next fall I said, okay, I'm going to get better looking models, you know, a more expensive photographer. And we did the same thing, hired some models and put them on the beach at Wind and Sea, and the same sort of posed ad, and the sales went to about, you know, 25, 30,000. And that next summer I was working on a golf course, you know, out in El Cajon here, and that summer I decided I'm going to get out of it. It's just too hard. People, you know, 2 or 3 years, people don't get it. It's expensive product, and so I figured out a way to just get rid of all the inventory. And then, you know, you live in California, right?
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
I'm from Bay Area.
yeah, but you know, every October the first storm comes through, and everyone just in California, oh, it's winter, right? And so I got home just soaking wet from the golf course, and the answering machine had like 25 messages from every surf shop that I sold to, going, oh man, everyone's in my store today wanting Ugg boots, you know. I've run out, can I come down and get some, you know? And so I couldn't even go out of business properly, you know. So I gave them everything I had and ordered a whole bunch more in from Australia. And before I advertised this next year, I was having a beer with one of my surf shop retailers in Ocean Beach. And I was explaining, I don't know what I'm doing wrong with advertising. He says, oh, shut up. And he calls out the back to all these little 12, 13-year-old grommets. And he says, what do you guys think of Ugg boots? And every one of them just went, oh, those Uggs, man, they're so fake. Have you seen those ads? Those models, they can't surf. And like instantly I realized every image I'd put out was so fake and so posed that I was actually damaging the brand by advertising that way, right? Not knowing it.
Before we get into the infamous marketing campaign that changed the trajectory of the company, I have got to take a brief minute to thank the sponsor of this video, and I'm very excited about them, Canva. Yes, Canva. If you're not familiar with Canva, it is an online tool that makes it easy for anyone to whip up fancy looking presentations, diagrams, and pretty much any type of graphic and video asset that you need without any experience. Almost everyone in this office uses Canva. Here's just a couple examples that you could do with Canva's visual suite. You can make YouTube thumbnails. You can map out your marketing funnel just like we do. You can design a professional looking pitch deck to pitch your startups to investors. You can brainstorm video ideas with Canva's new AI writing assistant and then actually make that video. What does Canva not do? And you can design and print business cards. These are just 5 of the 100 visual plus assets you can create with Canva. You can access any of those tools for free. I can't believe it's free. But if you really want to take your designs to the next level, there is Canva Pro, which has some advanced tools like Brand Kit, Background Mover for photos and videos, and Magic Resize. It's also super affordable. If you want to impress your colleagues or clients or friends with professional looking designs that you can do yourself, give Canva a try. I definitely recommend it. They hooked up our subscribers with a 45-day free trial of their Pro version so you can see for yourself how you like it. Click the link in the description to try Canva Pro for 45 days and give our sponsors some love. They help make videos like this possible. All right, back to the interview.
I called up a buddy of mine, Pete Townend, who was a former world surf champion, and he was running a Scholastic Surf Association in Orange County. Okay. And I said, hey, Pete, you got any young kids who are going to turn pro soon? Because I can't pay them. I'm paying them in Ugg boots, right? And he gave me these two guys, Mike Parsons and Ted Robinson. And so we just went surfing at Black's Beach, and I took my little Canon Sure Shot and I just did a photos of walking to the beach, and we went up to Trestles in San Onofre there and did the same thing. And I ran ads with those photographs of just these guys walking from the beach, fully clothed. The Ugg boots were, you couldn't even see the Ugg boots in the ads, they were that small. You know, the first ads were like all Ugg boot. These ads, you couldn't even see the Ugg boots. But it captured something, and the sales that year, you know, went to 220,000, just because I'd finally figured out what marketing and advertising is about, where, you know, you never advertise the product like I had been the first couple of years. Now I'm advertising a lifestyle, and I just knew that every little kid who reads Surfer magazine all over the world would die to be in that photograph, walking to Trestles with Mike Parsons, right? And that's where I realized what branding is, because the brand is not your trademark registration, and a brand is not your logo, you know, and a brand is not your product, but a brand is what people think of you. And I was able to recognize that I'd just created this like incredible, you know, every little kid at Laguna High was saying, Mom, I want a pair of Ugg boots for Christmas. All the cool kids at school got Ugg boots, right? And this peer pressure started to build in the surf market that was unbelievable. And when I figured and recognized what I'd done, yeah, it was really easy to translate into the snowboarding and skiing. I got these young snowboard kids, you know, with the pink hair and the, you know, the nose rings and then the hardest part of getting across the, you know, to back east was what do the kids do? You know, there's no surf, there's, you know, no real mountains. And I was on a road trip with one of my sales reps visiting a sporting goods store, and he said, oh shit, they all play hockey. And I went, oh my God, it's perfect, you know. So I found Let's Play Hockey magazine in Minnesota, and it was for the kids, right? And we had the Hockey Mum of the Week competition, you know, free pair of Ugg boots for your mom, you know, tell us why she's so great, you know. And then that sort of led into the moms having to buy Ugg boots for their kids, the boys. Cool. And then they're going, well, my daughter would like these, you know, and my God, I'd like these, right? And so it finally broke through the niche thing into being more mainstream. But that process I just described took 6 or 7 years. It was really, that's why I said those early days was just so hard. But I look back now, and that was the formative years of building a brand, and a brand that's worldwide and has just you know, it's just the highest level of branding.
I was listening to your story, and you commented how there was a sale of the company, but you didn't want it. I didn't quite follow that.
As the business started doubling, it had this tremendous strain on it because I had to buy more product to be ahead of the curve. And even though I was a chartered accountant, I didn't understand finance, right? And so I was always behind the gun trying to, you know, have enough inventory to sell. And so that meant getting bigger investors in, and the new investors didn't want the old ones, so I had to buy them out. And, you know, so what you were referring to was this time I bought in 3 guys from Anaheim, right? And they were in the warehousing closeout business, and they were going to bankroll it. And by now I would really come to love sales. So I was going to be the salesman on the road full time. They were going to handle all the importing and the warehousing and the shipping and accounting and everything. It was a great thing. And but there was one part of the contract, we were going to share it all 25% each. We'd already agreed on that. But I didn't actually get my stock certificate issued until I finished up this little trademark lawsuit that I was in. And I knew I'd win that. So we went ahead and signed up. And it was like a week later, I'd moved all the inventory up to Anaheim, and I set up the warehouse, and I'd got all the systems running. And so I went on my first road trip, right, as a salesman. And I went down to Huntington Surf and Sport, and I walked in the door, and the owner, he goes, "Hey, Brian, I heard you sold the business." And I went, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, I called an order in this morning. They said you don't own it anymore." And I said, "You're kidding me? They said that?" And I couldn't wait to get back to San Diego. I just, went. First of all, I went to the Shell gas station next door and called Neil, and I said, "Yeah, what are you telling people?" He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "So you tell them I don't own the company?" He said, "Well, yeah, you don't. You don't have your stock, And I said, "Bullshit, we're equal partners." He said, "Well, you've got to finish that law." And I drove back and read the contract, and I went, "Oh shit, I actually don't own the company." And I just went into this huge depression. And for like 4 days, I didn't leave the house, And it was on about the 4th or 5th night, I remember I was lying on my back on the floor and watching TV, and my wife was on the couch, and the show finished, I clicked it off, and I rolled over on my stomach, and I started crawling. Got up on my knees and started crawling towards the bedroom. And my wife, who's really a quiet person, she just looked at me and says, "You get up now and walk to bed like a man," Scared the crap out of me, But what it did, it was sort of broke this spell I was under, and I as I'm coming up off the floor, it was like, oh my God, there's so much more to life than this crappy little company, And so I slept like a baby that night, and the next morning I was, meditating, and I thought, oh yeah, I got these goosebumps again, because I thought, I've been thinking, what can I do? Real estate, no. Business broker, maybe, accountant, never. And then I just thought, oh my God, I've come to love sales. And then what can I sell? I thought, damn it, Ugg boots. Right? So I called up the guys at Anaheim, and I just ate humble pie. I said, look, I may never own the company, but I want to come back on board, and I want to get a pair of Ugg boots on every single person in America. And so that sort of flipped it around. Now I went back on the road. They agreed not to tell anybody I'd sold the company, so that was good. It was just still me. And I got back into the office at the end of the month, and he hands me a check, and it's $5,000. He says, "That's your commissions." And that was the first money I'd ever pulled out of the company after 5 years, right? And went on the road again, and the next month 10,000, next month another 10,000, and so I'm very philosophical in a lot of ways, and I've found a lot of stuff that I put in the book. And the lesson there was that nearly always your most disappointing disappointments become your greatest blessings, right? So here was I, just lost the company, and now I'm out on the road. Selling isn't a work for me. I'm surfing with all the surf shop owners. I'm playing golf with other ones. I'd walk in the store. I'd fix up all the sheepskin on the shelves. I'd give them a list of what they owed me. And it was so easy, and I loved it. And that was what really started to launch the company after that. Because then over the next 3 years, I built up about 30 sales reps all over the country, and every fall, most of the year in the summer and the spring, going into fall, I would travel. I put up 1.5 million frequent flyer miles in 3 years, just traveling with the sales reps, and each one of them had to get their 10 best customers, and I'd go visit them all. And so that's like 300 customers a year by 3 years in a row, and it was just an incredibly fun period of building the company and the brand.
Did they sell the company because you didn't have your shares, or what happened?
No, they held it. In fact, over that 3 year period, Neil bought Paul and Joe out.
Did you get your trademark resolved, so you got your 25%?
Yeah, I'm getting to that.
Oh, okay.
He bought them out, so now Neil owned 100% of it, and he'd seen me coming in, at Christmas time and working in the warehouse and shipping. It wasn't my job. I just did it, And we got to be really good friends, and finally I finished that trademark lawsuit, and he called in and said, "Hey Brian, come in next Wednesday. We're going to get the lawyers in, and we're going to issue your stock." And like I was in heaven, because finally I'm, after 3 years, I'm going to own my own company, And I was out at the weekend right before that, and I had a car phone now. You remember those ones with the cords?
Yeah.
And Laura called me, and she was crying, and she goes, "Oh, Brian, Neil's just died." And my whole world just like started to collapse again. I was so close to getting my stock and owning the company, and his wife had never set foot inside the business. She had no idea what was going on. So I called her up and I said, "I'll come up next, Monday, and we'll try and figure out what to do." And so I basically signed on for a year of no salary, just working on the rest of my commissions, and it took me, 6 to 9 months to try and figure out how to make it work. And there's a whole other story in there. But the bottom line is, I was able to save the company that year. And at the end of it, when we decided we were going to, I was going to get my stock, we bought new company cars, and we also took life insurance policies out on each other. And so come Christmas, the life insurance company called me up and said, "Hey, we want to settle on Neil's death." And it was enough money for me to buy the entire business, 100% of the business back, and gave her all the profits for the year. And she made out like a bandit because she was so happy, because had I walked away, she would have had nothing. And now she's got enough to retire on. And I ended up with 100% of the company again. Totally broke, right? Because I gave up every cent I had, but I owned 100% of the company again.
That's so good to hear. I was getting angry.
Yeah.
Because I was like, you built this thing, you created it, and then you don't even get you don't even get 25%.
I know, it was touchy, but
for someone wanting to start a company, you said perseverance is one of the key things, or what do you think?
I'd say it's the most key thing, yeah. As long as you got belief, you got a decent product and you believe in yourself, you'll make, if you stick around long enough, time has a funny way of making, it can be really hard, but something will just drop, and it's like, oh my God, there's another avenue and you spurt through it, and that's how the growth happens. You don't start here and go straight to there. It's hit a wall, give up or overcome it, next one, next problem, I got another choice, give up or work around it. And so the more times you work around it, the more market share you get, and the more distance you put between you and the competitors, and time's the only thing that can do that, by sticking in there and hanging in there. And every now and again the break comes, and if you're smart enough, you take it, and that's where that little jump, the blip comes.
When you think of a story of perseverance, what do you think of?
UGGs for sure. There was a company in Oregon importing running shoes from Japan called Blue Ribbon, right? They eventually became Nike. And they were going year after year just beating their head against the wall trying to get into the running market. And they were advertising in Runner's Magazine, and they were advertising in college, bookstore type avenues to try and get the colleges to take their brand. And then completely outside of their control, the sport of jogging took off, right? And so everyone's going, well, I need some jogging shoes, right? Well, so they'll find a running magazine, and here's this company that's been there for years, Nike. So, I'll buy a pair of Nikes. And so that demand, it wasn't Nike's marketing, it had nothing to do with Nike. The demand for running shoes just happened, and Nike was in the right place. Here's the kicker to the story. I read Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, the founder of Nike, and he listed the first years of sales. The first 5 years of sales of UGG was greater than the first 5 years sales of Nike. Now there's perseverance, right? They just hung in and tried to get better every year, doing what they did. Eventually, the world changed. another one similar. There's a company in Santa Monica, and they had this little white kid leather dance shoe, and they'd been advertising for nearly 10 years. They started in England. They were trying to get into the American market with this dance shoe, and they were advertising in dance magazines and high school cheerleading magazines, you know, trying to get the cheerleaders to take them on. And then outside of their control, the sport of aerobics happened. And you guess who that was?
Reebok?
Reebok.
Yeah.
What's a good dance shoe? Oh, Reebok. They've been there a few years. Let's get Reeboks. And they got into the millions and the hundreds of millions and the billions. And so you need to, you know, people throw around billion now like it's an achievable thing. It's damn near impossible to get to $1 billion unless there's some worldwide societal shift that takes it. And Reebok had theirs, Nike had theirs, you know. UGG did. Ours was a really lucky one, but it turned out to be Oprah. And right as I was selling the company, though, and how that came about, I had been shipping boots for this girl in England for years, you know. It was Trudy Styler, who was Sting's wife. We wanted to be part of that cool, you know, image. And she called me up one day and said, "Oh, Brian, I've just been to a seminar. It's changed my world. I need the most perfect pair of tall, size whatever, you know, brown UGG boots, and here's where to send them." And she goes, "Oprah, care of Oprah Winfrey." So I sent them over there, and she immediately ordered 20 pairs for her staff, and that was right in the year I was selling the company. But I knew that if we had just, you know, promoted, or she promoted UGGs online, we would have been killed. We would be out of business instantly because we could not provide the product. So when I sold it to Deckers Corp, they had the money, they had, you know, that 20, 30 million in the bank, and we were able to set up the production behind the scenes so that when she did launch it, then it went worldwide, and that was UGG's societal shift, right? And it went, you know, into the millions. You know, we were already in the millions, but it went into the hundreds of millions and the billions eventually. So it's a very important theme, you know, when people ask me, "Oh, how do you start $1 billion business?" You can't. You don't know what societal shift's coming down the 10 years ahead of time.
How much did you sell UGGs for?
There's around about 15 million. I got up to about that. We just, you know, had partners who wanted to cash out, and it got so big it was really hard for me to finance. So that's a whole other subject we could talk about. But
yeah, I'd be curious to hear more about that, because I think when people hear UGGs, I think people know it's a worldwide global brand, and I think they'd be surprised to find out that it was sold early on for 15 million.
Yeah, most people are surprised.
Do you regret selling it, or how do you feel about that?
No, this book I wrote, The Birth of a Brand book, its theme is that you can't give birth to adults, right? So everything starts with someone conceiving it and then taking the first action. So me buying 6 pairs of samples from Australia was the birth of UGG, right? And then every business just goes into this horrible infancy, and it just lies there, and nothing seems to happen. And that's when most entrepreneurs give up, because they've had the aha moment, they're going to be millionaires, and then suddenly nothing happens, right? And you got probably 100 friends who are all launched something online, right? And they were all going to be really rich really fast, and you know, it just didn't happen. So if you can get through that infancy, it starts toddling, you know, and you know, companies, magazines write articles about you, and all your, you know, true believers is telling all their friends about it, and that goes quickly into the youth, where is the best phase of every business, because you know, production's working, administration's working, warehousing and receiving's working, and the sales force is working, and you can run a $20-25 million company in that youth phase. But if it's a really great product or service, like UGG was, it hits the teenage years. And you remember when you were a teenager, you want to be at every party on a Saturday night? Well, in business, it's identical. You want to be in every major trade show, and you want to be in every mass retailer, and you can just really quickly run out of capital and go belly up in that phase. But eventually, you know, it matures and becomes a real business. So yeah, it's that. To answer your question, I got it up to the teenage stage, and it was growing so fast. I just didn't have the knowledge of finance to be able to forecast the production requirements. And when it got to about 15 million, I just thought, you know, I got to find somebody who can really take this and run with it. because if I had tried to hold on to it, and I would have failed miserably that year because of my success. And ironically, I had a buddy who had started a sandal business, and he had taken on the license for Teva sandals, and he'd taken his company public when the outdoor market took off, and that product ran with it. And I knew he was sitting on about 25-30 million bucks, and I saw him in the baggage claim at Atlanta airport, and I just went, oh my God, he's perfect. His company dies every winter, we die every summer, so if we could put these two companies together, it would be a brilliant amalgamation. So we walked up and I high-fived him and said, hey Doug, if we're going to do this, now's the time. And so I sold it to a public company, and then with his resources he was able to capitalize on the marketing that I'd done, and then that's very soon it took off and became the brand that it is worldwide. I'd sort of saturated, I hadn't saturated, but I'd got sales going in every state of America, but when they took it on, it then took on a worldwide sort of presence, which was really cool.
Did you keep equity in it after you sold it to him?
I sold out for cash, and I had a royalty stream afterwards, but that eventually died out. But I'm not bitter at all. I sold it at a great time. I was really happy with it.
How do you know that?
How do I know what?
Not a bad way. How do you know that you sold it at the right time?
Because it would have imploded if I had tried to hold on to it. It was growing so fast. I didn't have the capability to run a big company. I knew that. I love the entrepreneurial chaos. I love the uncertainty. I love solving problems. I love shit happening in real time. But when you get into my company had already got pretty corporate, and there were starting to be closed door meetings, and then you'd have a product development meeting, and we're going to pick the new colors for next year, and I'd be thinking grey raspberry and forest green, and we come out of the meeting with grey because that's the least offensive for everybody. So that's exaggerating, but that's the sort of shit that would happen, and I just had no real tolerance for that type of corporate meetings and consensus, all that sort of stuff.
When you so as you got all the you made all this money, you said you didn't really change much. You didn't spend a lot. Is there anything you wasted the money on, or any silly things?
Yeah. I mean, when you're newly rich like that and you've never really had it before, you think it's going to last forever. We'd go to charity events and I'd buy I would never need, but it's all for charity, and I've got so much money, and so I made a lot of early mistakes like that. But not that wasted all the millions, obviously, but it was like it showed a pattern of I can do this because I've got so much money. I'd probably do the same thing again, but be more cognizant of it this time as to am I making a really good investment with this money rather than just giving it away like I did. And I started businesses like the concrete business. That one, boy, that was set to be another $1 billion business, and if the recession hadn't hit us in 2009, that today would be many billions. It was a brilliant product, but it's never going to see the light of day because my intellectual property was in my head, and my steel guy and the concrete guy, and they're both doing great in their own lives now, and we just don't want to get back in the business.
We're in your house, which is very humble and it's very comfortable. It's gorgeous.
I've deliberately downsized to do that. Thanks for mentioning
I
that.
love it. Can you tell me about that? So did you get this when you bought like some big house on the beach, you said?
Oh yeah, I had right at the end of La Costa Avenue here, and it rolled into the lagoon and looked out over the ocean. It was one of the best properties on the California coast, and I loved it. I spent 18 years there, but every night, I'd sit out the back with my meals, and I had this little prayer, and I go, God, thank you for letting me be the caretaker of this property. Right? I never had ownership of it. Even though I owned the house, my prayer was, thanks for letting me be the caretaker of this property, because I knew there's one day I'm going to move on, And it was I loved that place, but I love this more. I was in my own little bubble down there, and I got quite reclusive down there because it was such a paradise. And I just realized, hey, I'm not seeing my friends as much as I should, and it was all because of the house, And so I just started you know, bit by bit figuring out I want to get some other place, and this is, you know, it's perfect for me. You know, it's the main I was telling you I lived on the street looking out over the ocean. Now I look out over the mountains. You know, the view is 50, 60 miles, and I see the sunrise and I watch the moonrise, and they're so precious. Those times are so precious that it makes it all worthwhile. You know.
Yeah. Well, because I think people imagine you make millions or billions or whatever this is, and you're like, you buy this big giant house, and it's also interesting. You could be even happier having like a comfortable house with a great view, and like when we walked up, you're outside on your laptop smoking a cigar. I was that was a great vibe. How do you look at money today? How do you feel about money today?
It's a means to an end. I don't ever want that big house again. You know, I don't need to spend millions on a big house again. I've been there, done that. I've had the best Mercedes that I could find at the time, a CLS 550. It was just like looked like a dart. You know, it was such a beautiful car. I've been through that, done that. I don't need that for my ego anymore. I just, you know, as long as the rent, I know I've got no problems with the rent being paid for a year or two. That's really all the money you need. You know, just be able to go and, you know, luckily because I'm speaking so much now all over the world, I've got paid vacations everywhere I go. You know, I make money by going out and traveling. And one of my passions when I was a young kid was I want to see as much of the planet before I die as I possibly can. And now it's all happening. You know, I didn't expect it to take this long, but I am, you know, last month was in Nepal and India. You know, back here, in December I'll be in the Philippines and then Costa Rica next year. You know, it's just a dream job that I got now. And I just talk to entrepreneurs and I share all my philosophy, and I know I touch people. They come up to me afterwards, and you know, some of them said, "Oh my God, I was going to give up my business, but now I realize I'm just coming out of the infancy. I'm a toddler," and now they can put you know, they can identify with where they are in the business cycle, and they're stoked all over again. They go, "I'm so excited to get out and take it to the," you know, and so I know I got goosebumps, you know, just thinking about the people that I touch. It's brilliantly rewarding for me.
How would you like to be remembered?
The most common compliment I get, and it's the highest compliment I get when I come off stage, is people just go, "Oh my God, you're so real." You know, and that I think is how I want to be remembered. He was real. I think I'm doing a good job.
If you like this video, you are going to love this video right up here where I knock on millionaires' doors and ask them how to get rich. And make sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Uncle Noah loves you, and I'll see you out there. Pew, pew.